Don't eat that. The fork stopped 1 inch from his mouth. Every gun in the room came out. She was 8 years old, barefoot, soaking wet, shaking so hard her teeth rattled, standing alone in the doorway of the most dangerous saloon in the Southwest, pointing directly at the plate of the most feared man in 3 states. Nobody moved. Colt Maddox, president of the Hells Angels, a man who had never flinched at anything, sat completely still. Then the little girl said the 6 words that shattered everything. The man who made it tried it on me first. And the entire desert shifted. If this story already has your heart pounding, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop your city in the comments below so I can see exactly how far this story has traveled. And stay with me until the very end, because what this little girl knew will shatter everything you think you understand about loyalty, power, and what it really means to protect someone. The Iron Mesa Saloon was not a place where weakness survived. It sat at the edge of a 2-lane highway that cut through the Arizona desert like a scar. A long, low building with a tin roof, cracked neon signs, and a parking lot packed with motorcycles that cost more than most people's houses. Inside, the walls were covered with road maps, license plates, and the kind of photographs that never got hung in polite company. The air smelled like motor oil, whiskey, and something older, something like authority. Tonight it was supposed to be a celebration. Colt Maddox sat at the head of the long center table, and the men around him, 37 of the most hardened road warriors in the Southwest, were loud, drinking hard, and laughing the way men laugh when they've just won something they fought a long time to get. The weapons contract was signed. The rival crew out of New Mexico, the Viper Rods, had been pushed back past the state line, and the rail yard territory in Mesa that everyone had been bleeding over for 2 years, as of 6 hours ago, it belonged to the Hells Angels. Colt had built this, all of it, from nothing, from a second-hand motorcycle, a borrowed leather cut, and a reputation earned one confrontation at a time on the open road. Now he commanded 3 states, ran a logistics network that moved millions, and sat at a table where men who could kill you with their bare hands called him president without irony. He was 44 years old, blonde going silver at the temples, with hands that looked like they'd been carved out of old wood, scarred, thick, permanently stained with something that never fully washed out. His eyes were the color of the desert sky about 20 minutes before a storm. Calm, flat, waiting. He picked up his fork. The steak in front of him had been cut thick, cooked exactly the way he liked it, just past rare, black on the outside, red at the center. The cook, Elena, had been making his meals at the Iron Mesa for 11 years. She knew how he liked his food the way a good soldier knows how his commander takes his coffee. The fork was almost to his mouth, and then the front door blew open. Not from wind, from a child. She hit the door with both palms, stumbled through it, and stood there in the frame, dripping rainwater onto the floorboards, her chest heaving, her eyes scanning the room until they locked directly onto Colt Maddox. The room went dead quiet. 37 men who had faced down rival gangs, federal agents, and a pipeline explosion that made the 6 o'clock news. All of them stopped and stared at an 8-year-old girl who looked like she'd run 5 miles through a desert storm barefoot. "Don't eat that!" Her voice cracked on the last word, high and sharp and full of something that couldn't be faked. Raw, desperate terror. Hands moved to holsters. Eyes went to the doors and windows. 2 men were already on their feet before the echo of her voice stopped bouncing off the tin roof. Briggs, Colt's enforcer, built like a refrigerator with a beard, was the first one to speak. "Who in the—" "Let her talk." Colt's voice was quiet. That was always the tell with Colt Maddox. When everyone else got louder, he got quieter. The room recognized the register. Everyone shut up. He set the fork down on the edge of the plate, carefully, like it mattered exactly where it landed. He looked at the girl. She was shaking, not just from cold, though she was clearly freezing. There was something under the shaking, something deeper. She'd been running, but she'd also been afraid for a long time before tonight. That kind of fear lives in the shoulders, in the set of the jaw, in the way the eyes never fully stop moving, even when the body goes still. "Come here," Colt said. She didn't move for a second. The room full of bikers stared at her. Then slowly she crossed the floor toward him. Her bare feet left wet prints on the wood. When she got close enough, Colt could see her face clearly. She was blonde, dirty blonde, the kind that turns nearly white in summer sun. A cut on her left knee, several days old. Bruising on her forearm, fading yellow-green. Somebody's child. Nobody's right now. "What's your name?" he asked. "Daisy." "Daisy what?" "Hart. Daisy Hart," she swallowed. "My dad was James Hart. He worked at the West Side refinery." Something moved across Colt's face, too fast for most people to catch it, but Briggs caught it, and Briggs filed it away. "You said there's poison in my food." Colt's voice was even. "How do you know that?" "Because he put it there." "Who?" She looked at the plate, then back at Colt, and she described him. Tall, silver at the temples, boots, expensive ones, the kind with a silver toe cap, but dusty at the heel like they'd been walked hard in the last few hours. A scar between the thumb and forefinger of his right hand. A custom gold watch with a rectangular face, and a black pickup truck, late model, parked behind the abandoned rail depot on Old Mesa Road. She said it all in one steady breath, like she'd memorized it, like she'd been rehearsing it since the moment she ran. And Colt Maddox's blood went cold, because she wasn't describing a stranger. She was describing a dead man. He didn't show it. That was the discipline of 20 years, keeping the face still even when the chest is cracking open. He reached slowly to his left and picked up the glass of water that sat beside his plate. He held it up to the light, tilted it slightly. "Briggs," he said, "get Elena." "Colt, now." Briggs went. Colt looked at the girl. "Sit down, Daisy." She pulled out the chair next to him, the one that belonged to Tanner, his logistics chief, who was currently standing 3 feet away with his arms crossed and an expression on his face that Colt couldn't quite read. "You hungry?" Colt asked her. She nodded before she could stop herself. Pride lost to an empty stomach. He pushed a basket of bread toward her without ceremony. "Eat that. Don't touch my plate." She grabbed a roll and ate it in 3 bites, and Colt watched her the way a man watches something that doesn't fit, trying to figure out where it belongs. Elena came out of the kitchen wiping her hands on a towel. She was in her 50s, stout, gray-haired, with eyes that didn't miss anything, and a manner that brooked no nonsense from any of the men in the saloon, including the one at the head of the table. "What?" she said. "You make this steak?" Colt asked. "Same as always. Why?" "Anyone come through the kitchen in the last hour? Anyone you didn't recognize?" Elena's expression shifted. Not guilt. She wasn't capable of guilt. Elena was one of the straightest shooting human beings Colt had ever met. This was something else. This was recollection. "There was a delivery," she said slowly. "About an hour before service. Man came in with a crate of supplies. Said the regular supply driver sent him. Seemed normal enough. Did he go near the prep area?" A pause. "He asked to use the back bathroom. I told him the staff one was just past the..." She stopped. She looked at the steak. "He walked past the prep station." The room went very quiet again, but a different kind of quiet this time. Colt looked at the plate. "Nobody touch it," he said, "and nobody leave this room until I say so." He took Daisy into the back office, a small room with a metal desk, a wall safe, and a mounted map of the Southwest that was covered in handwritten notations. He closed the door. 2 of his most trusted men stood outside it. He sat down across from her. "Tell me everything," he said, "from the beginning. Don't skip anything because you think it's small. The small things matter." She told him. It came out in pieces at first, a child's non-linear memory, jumping forward and back. But Colt was patient, and he guided her gently, and eventually the picture assembled itself. 3 weeks ago, her father, James Hart, hadn't come home from his shift at the West Side refinery. A man in a company truck had come to their trailer that evening and told Daisy and her grandmother that there'd been an accident. A pressure valve failure, an explosion in the processing section. 3 workers injured, 1 fatality, her father. The company had sent flowers and a check. Her grandmother had cashed the check because there was nothing else to do. But Daisy had gone back to the refinery 2 days later, on her bicycle, alone, because her father had told her something the week before he died, and she hadn't been able to stop thinking about it. "What did he tell you?" Colt asked. Daisy looked at the map on the wall for a moment. "He said he found something. In the reports. Numbers that didn't add up. He said someone was lying about the safety of the pressure systems, and that if the wrong thing happened at the wrong time, it wouldn't just be an accident, it would be a massacre. He said he was going to report it. Did he?" "I don't know. He died 4 days later." Colt was quiet. "What did you see at the refinery?" he asked. "I saw the man. The one who came to the saloon tonight. He was meeting with 2 other men in the parking lot. They didn't see me. I was behind the equipment shed. I heard them." "What did they say?" She closed her eyes, the way children do when they're trying to bring something back precisely. One of them said, "Phase 2 is on schedule." Another one said, "Clean the docks." And the man, the one with the boots, he said, "Before the shipment arrives, we need the chair empty first." Colt's jaw tightened slightly. "The chair," he said. "I didn't know what that meant," Daisy said, "but I think I do now." She looked at the head of the table through the office window, visible through the small rectangular glass panel in the door. The chair. Colt's chair. "After that," Daisy continued, "they walked toward a van that was parked on the side road, and I followed. I shouldn't have. My grandmother would have." She stopped, swallowed. "I followed them. They stopped at a small building near the old depot. I got close enough to see through the window. What was inside? Crates, lots of them, and a man on a phone writing things down." She hesitated. "They had food there, like takeout containers, and I saw the man with the boots open one of the containers and hand it to someone. And the other person ate it, and then about 20 minutes later he was..." Her voice broke slightly. "He was on the floor, shaking, and they just watched. They just stood there and watched." Colt said nothing for a long moment. "And then what?" "Then I ran and I kept running. I didn't know where to go. My grandmother is sick. She can't do anything. I don't have anyone. And then I saw the lights of the saloon, and I heard the motorcycles, and I thought..." She stopped again, looked at her hands. "I thought, whoever runs this place, they're not afraid of anything. If anyone can stop it, they can." Colt looked at her for a long time. Then he said, "You ran 5 miles in the rain to warn a man you'd never met." "I didn't want someone else to die without knowing why," Daisy said. "My dad died without knowing anyone was coming to save him. I didn't want that to happen to someone else." Colt Maddox, who had not felt anything close to vulnerable in 15 years, looked away. Was most dangerous. A deliberate calm was most dangerous. A deliberate calm, like the moment before a controlled detonation. He stood at the head of the table. "Tanner," he said, "where were you an hour before service tonight?" Tanner, logistics chief, lean and angular, mid-40s, a man who had been with Colt since the Phoenix chapter days, didn't move. But something shifted behind his eyes, just for a fraction of a second. "Supply run," Tanner said, "same as every Thursday." "Which route?" "I tend to the junction, then back up through..." "Which fuel stop?" A pause, too small for anyone else to notice, not too small for Colt. "Desert Star, on Route 9. "Desert Star's been closed for 3 months, Briggs said flatly, from across the room. The silence that followed was a different kind of animal altogether. Tanner didn't move. His face didn't change, but his right hand, just slightly, moved 2 inches toward his jacket pocket. "Don't," Colt said. One word, absolute. Tanner's hand stopped. "Sit down," Colt said. "We're going to talk." They didn't talk in the saloon. Colt had 2 men escort Tanner to the storage room in the back. Not roughly, not with violence, not yet. And he told everyone else to clear the main floor except for Briggs and Doc Reynolds, his accountant. Doc was a small man, careful, quiet, always slightly overdressed for the environment. He had clean hands, wire-rimmed glasses, and the expression of a man who was perpetually running calculations in the background of whatever conversation he appeared to be participating in. Colt stood in front of both of them. "I want financials," he said. "Everything that moved in the last 6 months that ran through Tanner's authorization." "Colt," Doc said carefully, "that's a significant... I'm not asking for your opinion on the scope. I'm telling you what I need." Doc nodded once, pushed up his glasses. "Give me 40 minutes. You have 20, he turned to Briggs. "The 3 men I posted at the rail yard tonight, have you been able to reach them?" Briggs's face answered the question before he spoke. "Radio silence since 9 p.m. Colt checked his watch. It was now 11:40. "Send 2 units. Tell them no engagement until I get there. Eyes only. And if they find... whatever they find, I need to know the condition of the cargo." Briggs went. Colt went back to the office. Daisy was still sitting at the desk. She had eaten 2 more rolls and was now looking at the map on the wall with an intensity that surprised him. "You're still here," he said. "You said I could stay." "I didn't say that." "You didn't say I had to leave," she said, with the particular logic of a child who has learned to find the exact center of every available option. He almost smiled. It surprised him enough that he stopped before it happened. He sat down across from her again. "The man you described, the scar between his thumb and forefinger," he paused. "Did it look like a burn scar or a cut scar?" She considered this seriously. "Like a burn, but old. White at the center." Colt nodded slowly. "And the watch," he said, "the gold one with the rectangular face. Was there anything on the back? Any engraving? Could you see?" When he set it on the table in the building, it was face down. "I could see the back through the window. There were letters. I couldn't read them all, but I could see a W and a G and something that might have been a number. Maybe 12, like a date. W.G. Wade Granger." Colt pressed his palms flat on the desk, breathed once, slowly. "You're doing good, Daisy," he said, and he meant it. "You're doing real good." She looked at him carefully. "Is he someone you know?" "He was someone I knew." "What happened to him?" "He died," Colt said, 12 years ago, in a refinery explosion." She looked at him for a long moment with the particular, uncomfortable clarity that children sometimes have. "Did you see his body?" she asked. Colt didn't answer, but the answer was no, and they both knew it. The call came in at 12:17 a.m. Briggs, voice stripped flat. The kind of flat that means the news is bad enough that he's decided not to let anything color it. "We found the 3 men from the rail yard." "Alive?" "2 are, 1 isn't." Colt closed his eyes for exactly 2 seconds. "Who?" "Mercer. Mercer, 26 years old, had a wife named Raina and a daughter named Clara who was 4 months old." "And the cargo?" "Still there, but Colt..." A pause. "Someone's been at the shipping manifest. The route information has been altered. If we'd run that transfer tomorrow on the logged route, we'd have driven straight into..." Briggs stopped, started again. "It was a kill box at the county junction. They had it planned down to the mile marker." Colt looked at Daisy across the desk. An 8-year-old girl, soaking wet and barefoot, had just saved not only his life, but the lives of everyone who would have been on that transfer. "Hold the position," Colt said. "I'm coming." He stood up, looked at Daisy. "I need you to stay here tonight," he said. "You'll be safe. No one comes in or out of this building without my authorization. Where are you going? She asked. To fix something. She looked at him. The man with the boots, is he dangerous? Yes. More dangerous than you? Colt picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. That, he said, is what we're going to find out. He was at the door when she said his name. Colt. He stopped. My dad was a good man, she said. Her voice was very small but very steady. He didn't deserve what happened to him. Neither did your man. Whatever you're going to do, she paused, just make sure it actually counts for something. Not just for tonight, for real. Colt Maddox, president of the Hells Angles, Arizona chapter, a man who had been feared across the Southwest for 15 years, stood in the doorway of his own back office and received a lesson in purpose from an 8-year-old girl with dirty feet and borrowed courage. I hear you, he said. He walked out into the night, and behind him, in the silence of the saloon, Daisy Hart sat alone with the map and the rolling thunder of motorcycles and the weight of everything that was still coming, trusting, with no evidence except instinct, that the most dangerous man she had ever met was going to use that danger for something that finally mattered. She was right to trust him, but she didn't yet know how far the roots of the conspiracy went, or that the man behind it had been watching Colt for 12 years, waiting, planning, patient as a desert storm building at the edge of the horizon. And she didn't know what Doc Reynolds found in the financial records 20 minutes later. Something so buried, so carefully disguised, that it pointed not just to Tanner, but to someone else entirely. Someone who had been sitting at Colt's right hand for longer than Tanner had. The night was only beginning, and the desert had more secrets than any of them were ready to face. Doc Reynolds had been with the Hells Angles for 9 years, and in that time he had seen things that would make a normal accountant retire to a cabin somewhere and never speak again. He had moved money through shell companies, laundered logistics revenue through 3 legitimate businesses, and kept the financial architecture of Colt's empire invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look. He was good at his job because he was meticulous, because he was quiet, and because he understood that in this world, the man who controls the numbers controls the truth. Which was exactly why, when he opened Tanner's authorization files at 12:03 in the morning and found what he found, his hands went still on the keyboard and stayed that way for almost a full minute. He picked up his phone, put it down, picked it up again. Colt, he said when the line connected, you need to come back. I'm en route to the rail yard. I know, but you need to hear this before you get there. Doc paused, and the pause itself was a kind of warning. Doc Reynolds did not pause. Doc Reynolds spoke in complete, measured sentences, like a man reading from a prepared statement. A pause from Doc meant the information had broken his rhythm. The money going to Tanner, it's not coming from an outside source. Colt's voice didn't change. Say that again. The payments to Tanner over the last 7 months, the ones I can confirm are bribes, not operations. They're not coming from outside the organization. They're being routed from inside, from a fund that I set up. A fund that only 3 people have access to. Silence on the line. You, Colt said. Me, Doc confirmed. You and Briggs. The motorcycles kept moving through the dark. Colt didn't speak for a long time. Doc, he finally said, are you telling me someone's been using our own money to buy our own trader? Yes. And it looks like it came from you, me, or Briggs. Yes. Another silence, longer this time. Where are you right now? Colt asked. Back office, same place you left me. Don't move. Don't make any calls. Don't talk to anyone. Colt, I know, Colt said. And he did know, the way you know things about people you've worked alongside for nearly a decade. Not from evidence, but from the accumulated weight of 1,000 moments that told you who someone was. But until I know exactly what this is, you're safer in that room than anywhere else. You understand? Yes. Lock the door. He hung up. He pulled the bike to the side of the road, a hard stop, gravel scattering, and sat there in the dark for 60 seconds with the engine idling. Briggs was already at the rail yard. If Briggs was the one behind the money routing, Colt had just sent his men into a position where Briggs controlled the ground. He pulled out his phone again and called a man named Ruiz, a rider from the Tucson chapter. No connection to the Mesa operation, no access to the financial structure. A man who owed Colt a debt large enough that loyalty wasn't even a question. I need you at the Mesa rail yard in 20 minutes, Colt said. Come in from the South Access Road. Don't announce yourself. Don't contact Briggs. Eyes on everything. That's one of ours, Ruiz said carefully. I know what it is. 20 minutes. He ended the call and drove. The thing about being betrayed by the people closest to you was that it didn't hit you like a punch. It hit you like a slow bleed, something you couldn't stop because you couldn't even find the wound. Colt had built the Hells Angles, Arizona chapter on a foundation of selective trust. He hadn't given it to many people. The men he had given it to, he'd given it completely. That was the cost of being wrong about any of them. He thought about Mercer, 26 years old, a daughter named Clara who was 4 months old and would grow up without her father because someone inside these walls had sold a route and a timetable to a dead man who wasn't dead. He pushed the throttle harder and let the anger do what anger does best, burn clean and give you something to run on. The rail yard looked different at night than it did in daylight. The floodlights on the main platform cast long, industrial shadows across the loading docks, and the smell of diesel and hot metal was thick in the air. Colt rolled in from the East Access Road and killed the headlight 200 yards out, navigating the last stretch on muscle memory and the ambient glow of the yard lights. Briggs was standing near the loading dock with 4 men. He turned when he heard Colt's engine. Fast ride, Briggs said. How's the cargo? Intact. Whoever altered the manifest didn't touch the actual shipment. They wanted it to survive, just without us. He paused. Or without you. Walk me to Mercer. They walked in silence. Mercer had been moved to the side office in the yard's small operations building. 2 men stood guard. Colt went in alone. The man on the floor against the wall was Danny Mercer, and the sight of him, that familiar face, still and pale and gone from the world, hit Colt somewhere behind the sternum with a force that no incoming punch had ever managed. He crouched down. He stayed there for a while. Then he stood up, and the thing that had hit him behind the sternum became something harder and more permanent, the kind of weight a man carries forward, not backward. He came out of the room. Briggs was waiting. Who found him? Colt asked. Syons and Kowalski. They came in from the north gate about 40 minutes ago. Before that, before they got here, who was the last person to confirm Mercer's position tonight? Briggs thought about it. Tanner logged the positioning assignments at 6 p.m. Tanner knew exactly where Mercer was posted. Yes, so whoever came for Mercer knew where to find him because Tanner told them. That's how it reads. Colt looked at Briggs for a long moment, direct, searching, not accusatory, just open, the way a man looks at someone when he needs to read the truth from their face rather than their words. Briggs met his eyes without flinching. What? Nothing, Colt said. Get everyone pulled back to a tight perimeter. Nothing moves until morning. He called Ruiz. What do you see? Everything looks clean from where I'm standing, Ruiz said. Your man Briggs is running a tight setup. Nobody's made any calls I could see. Nobody's moved off position. Colt breathed once through his nose. Briggs was clean. The money routing was a setup. Someone had used their fund access to implicate all 3 of them, scatter the suspicion, make it impossible to know who to trust. Wade Granger had always been methodical. That was the thing about him. Not just smart, methodical. He planned 3 steps ahead and then planned for what happened when those 3 steps failed. Colt went back inside the operations building and called Doc. The fund access, he said. When were those accounts last accessed? I've been looking at that, Doc said. The most recent access was 8 days ago. But here's the thing. The IP routing on the access is masked through a relay I recognize. It's the same relay that Tanner uses for remote logistics management. So whoever accessed the fund, they used Tanner's relay to do it. Meaning Tanner was the access point, but not necessarily the one who initiated the transfer. Correct. Someone could have used Tanner's credentials remotely, either by stealing them or because Tanner gave them willingly. Or Tanner was being directed by someone who knew our infrastructure well enough to route through his relay specifically. Yes, Doc said. And Colt, the level of knowledge required to do that isn't external. You'd have to know our system from the inside, from years inside. The weight of that settled. Wade Granger had been gone for 12 years. But before he was gone, he had built half of this infrastructure himself. He had designed the relay systems. He had written the original financial protocols. This wasn't just an outside job. It was a man coming back to a house he helped build and using his own keys. Doc, Colt said, I need you to do something careful. I need you to go back past the point where Tanner's credentials were compromised and tell me the last time those relay systems were accessed from outside our network. Not just in the last year. Go back as far as the logs run. A long pause. That's going to take some time. Take it. He hung up. Looked up at the ceiling of the small operations building. Outside, he could hear the low, steady activity of his men on the perimeter. Engines idling, boots on gravel, the quiet radio exchanges of people doing their jobs. He thought about what Daisy had said. Phase 2, clean the docks. Before the shipment arrives. Phase 2, which meant there had been a Phase 1. He called Briggs back in. The refinery explosion, Colt said. 12 years ago. The one that killed Wade. Walk me through what you know. Briggs looked slightly surprised, not by the question but by the timing of it. That was before my time with you. I know what you've told me. Which is? Detonation in the main processing chamber. 3 dead, 1 critically injured. Wade's body was found in the secondary corridor, or what was left of it, identified by, he paused, by dental records. Who submitted the dental records? Briggs blinked. I don't know. The refinery's insurance company handled the death certification. Which refinery? Another pause, a longer one. West Side, Briggs said. The same refinery where James Hart had worked. The same refinery whose falsified safety reports James Hart had discovered. The same refinery whose management had sent a man in a company truck to tell an 8-year-old girl that her father was dead. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a thread, running from 12 years ago straight to tonight, connecting a faked death to a real one, a ghost to a child, and a mafia boss's meal to a conspiracy that had been building longer than anyone in this room had understood. Get me everything you can find on Westside Refinery Management, Colt said. Corporate structure, ownership chain, executive names, whatever you can access in the next 2 hours. On what authority? My authority. Colt looked at him steadily. Mercer is dead, Briggs. Danny Mercer is dead in that room, and someone planned it. Someone who has been planning it for a very long time. I want to know every face attached to that plan. Briggs went. Colt sat down in the operations building's single metal chair and took a moment. Just one, just enough, to feel the full weight of the night before folding it into something he could carry. He thought about Daisy, alone in the back office of the saloon with a map on the wall and bread on the desk, and the particular courage of a child who has already lost the worst thing she had to lose. Her father had found the same thread Colt was now pulling, and her father had died for it. That was not going to happen to Daisy Hart. He made that decision the way he made all decisions that mattered. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with a quiet, absolute finality that settled into his bones like something cast in iron. His phone buzzed. Doc. I found it, Doc said, and his voice had a quality Colt had never heard from him before. Something close to awe. The relay logs go back 14 years, and there are access points in here from 12 years ago, just before the refinery explosion. And then nothing for almost 11 years. And then they start again, 18 months ago. Wade's been rebuilding for 18 months. More than that, the access pattern in the last 18 months it's architectural, Colt. He's not just watching, he's been systematically testing each element of our operation. Logistics routes, financial flows, personnel schedules. It's like... Doc stopped. Like what? Like someone studying a building they want to demolish, making sure they know every load-bearing wall before they start. Colt stood up. And the payments to Tanner, Colt said. When did they start? 7 months ago, 2 months after the access pattern intensified. 7 months. Tanner had been compromised for 7 months. That meant everything Tanner had touched in 7 months was potentially contaminated. Routes, schedules, personnel assignments. The 3 men posted at the rail yard tonight. Mercer's position, the weapons transfer route, the saloon's supply chain, the food. Colt called the saloon. One of his men picked up on the second ring. The steak on my plate, Colt said. Don't let anyone touch it. Get it into a sealed container and keep it until morning. I want it tested at the county lab when they open. What are we telling? You're telling nothing. You're doing what I said. Yes, sir. And the girl, Daisy Hart, she is not to leave that building. Anyone who tries to take her out of there, anyone, I don't care who they say they are, you call me first. Understood? Understood. He ended the call. And then he stood very still because something Daisy had said was surfacing in his memory with a new and urgent clarity. She had followed the man with the boots to the building near the old depot. She had watched through the window. She had seen a man on a phone, writing things down. She had seen crates, and then she had seen the man hand food to someone and watch that someone collapse. She had described it as a test. But who was the person they had tested it on? He hadn't asked. She had moved past it quickly, the horror of it, the speed of it, and he had let her because he was building the larger picture. But now, in the operational clarity of the rail yard at 1 a.m, that detail stood up and refused to be ignored. He called the saloon again. Put Daisy on. A pause, a shuffle, and then her voice, careful, awake. She hadn't been sleeping. It's me, Colt said. I have one more question. The man they gave the food to, at the building by the depot, the one who got sick, did you see what happened to him after? Silence. Daisy. They carried him out, she said quietly, in the back, through a door I couldn't see. 2 of the other men carried him. Did he walk out? A very long pause. No, she said. He didn't walk. Colt's jaw tightened. Thank you. Is he? Go back to what you were doing. You're safe. I'll be back before morning. He put the phone in his pocket and turned to find Briggs standing in the doorway with a tablet in his hand and an expression that meant the next thing out of his mouth was not going to be simple. Corporate ownership on West Side Refinery, Briggs said. Public filing shows a holding company, Mesa Industrial Partners, LLC, registered 18 months ago. He paused. The registered agent on the filing is a law firm out of Phoenix. Standard enough. But one of the named executives in the original articles of incorporation, he held out the tablet. Colt took it. He read the name. He read it again. The name on the screen was not Wade Granger. Wade Granger was too careful, too methodical, to put his own name anywhere near a paper trail. The name on the screen was Robert Tanner. Tanner hadn't been bribed. Tanner was a partner. And that changed everything about the shape of the betrayal. Because a bribed man is afraid and desperate and eventually breaks. A partner is invested. A partner has built something he intends to keep. A partner does not give up the plan when the pressure comes. He escalates it. Colt handed the tablet back to Briggs. "Get Tanner out of the storage room," he said, "and bring him to me." "You want him here?" "I want him where I can look at him when I ask him the questions," Colt said. "Bring him." He walked out to the edge of the loading dock and stood there in the dark with the diesel smell and the distant sound of the highway and the weight of Mercer in the room behind him, and the knowledge that everything he thought he understood about the shape of tonight was smaller and older and more personal than he had imagined. Wade Granger had not come back to destroy Colt's empire. He had come back to reclaim it. And Tanner had been helping him build the foundation for nearly 2 years. The shipment was safe for now. The perimeter was tight. But Phase 2, whatever Phase 2 was, hadn't been stopped. It had only been delayed. And somewhere out in the desert dark, a man with a gold watch and old burn scars and the patience of someone who had spent 12 years planning his return was watching the same night sky and recalculating. Colt heard boots on gravel, turned. Tanner stood there, hands loose at his sides, 2 of Colt's men flanking him. And the expression on his face was something Colt had never seen there before. Not guilt, not fear, not even defiance. It was relief. Like a man who had been carrying something very heavy for a very long time and had finally put it down. "You already know," Tanner said. "I know enough," Colt said. "You're going to tell me the rest." Tanner didn't sit down when Colt gestured to the chair. He stood, hands loose at his sides, and the relief on his face held, which was the strangest thing, the most unsettling thing, because relief meant he had made his decision before he even walked through that door. He had already surrendered something. The only question was what he was keeping. "Wade came to me 19 months ago," Tanner said. No preamble, no deflection, just the words, flat and direct, like a man reading a damage report. He walked up to me in the parking lot of a gas station outside Flagstaff. I thought I was seeing a ghost. I almost ran. "But you didn't," Colt said. "No." "Why not?" Tanner was quiet for a moment. "Because he looked at me the way he always looked at people when he wanted something. Like he already knew you were going to say yes, and he was just giving you the courtesy of pretending you had a choice." Colt knew that look. He had seen it on Wade's face 100 times in their years together, building the organization from the ground up. Wade Granger had a particular talent for making the inevitable feel like a decision. "What did he want?" Colt asked. "He told me the organization had been stolen from him, that you'd leveraged his fake death to consolidate power, taken the territory that was supposed to be jointly held, cut out the men who were loyal to him, built an empire on a foundation that was half his." "And you believe that?" Tanner looked at him steadily. "I believe some of it. You did consolidate fast after the explosion. There were men Wade brought in who were gone within 6 months of his death. I noticed it at the time. I told myself it was operational, restructuring. But when Wade said it out loud, standing in a gas station parking lot, it landed differently. "He told you I killed him," Colt said, not a question. "He told me you arranged for the explosion, that you used refinery contacts to stage it." The silence in the operations building was the kind that had texture, thick with what both men knew and what neither was ready to name directly. "And you believe that?" Colt said again. This time it was different, not accusatory, almost tired. "I wanted it to be true," Tanner said, and that honesty, raw, ungarnished, hit harder than any accusation would have. "Because if it was true, then I had a reason. For all the years I felt like a mechanism instead of a man. Always moving cargo, always running logistics, always being useful and never being—" He stopped, started again. "I wanted a reason. Wade gave me one." Colt said nothing. He let it sit. "What did he ask you to do?" he said finally. "At first just information, schedules, routes, nothing that felt catastrophic, just enough that I could tell myself I was managing it, that I had control over how far it went. He paused. That's how it starts, isn't it? You give a small thing and tell yourself it's the last small thing. And then it wasn't. 6 months ago, he told me about the weapons transfer. He said he wanted it documented. The route, the timing, the manifest. He said he wasn't going to touch the cargo itself, that it was about leverage. Proof that he could take it, so that when he came back to renegotiate his position, you'd understand what he was capable of. But that wasn't the plan, Colt said. No, Tanner's voice dropped. I didn't find out what the plan actually was until 3 weeks ago, when James Hart died. The name landed in the room like something thrown hard against a wall. Hart found the falsified safety reports, Tanner said, the ones that covered up the original explosion, the one that supposedly killed Wade. The reports were faked to make the detonation look accidental. Wade had help inside the refinery executive structure, men who helped him disappear. Hart got close enough to the real records that they couldn't let him keep looking. They killed him, Colt said. They called it an accident. Same playbook as 12 years ago. Tanner's jaw tightened. That's when I understood what I had actually helped build. Not a renegotiation, not a power play between old partners. I had helped a man cover up a murder, and then watched him order another one. Why didn't you come to me? The question was simple. The answer was complicated enough that Tanner had to look away before he could form it. Because I'd been feeding him your roots for 7 months, Tanner said. Coming to you meant confessing what I'd done. It meant Mercer and the others at the rail yard. He stopped. A muscle in his jaw flexed. I didn't know about the rail yard positioning until 2 days ago. By then I understood that what he'd told me about leverage was a lie. He wasn't planning to take the cargo. He was planning to use the cargo to destroy the chapter, blow the shipment, frame the Hell's Angles for a massacre, and bring federal heat down hard enough to finish what the poison didn't. The poison was phase 1, Colt said. Yes. And phase 2 was the rail yard ambush. Yes. Colt walked to the small window of the operations building and stood there with his back to Tanner. He wasn't looking at anything. He was feeling the architecture of it, the way it had been built, piece by piece, with patience and precision, by a man who understood exactly how each piece connected to the others. The man they tested the poison on, Colt said, at the building near the depot, who was he? He heard Tanner breathe. A drifter, Tanner said. Someone Wade's men brought in. He didn't survive. Colt turned back around. A man is dead, he said. Mercer is dead. And James Hart is dead. And you've been standing inside my organization for 7 months, making all of it possible. Tanner didn't try to defend it. He stood there and held it the way you hold something that burns, because putting it down isn't an option anymore. Yes, he said. Where is Wade right now? I don't know exactly. He moves. He never stays in the same location 2 nights running. But I have a contact number, a burner that gets changed every 72 hours. The current number is still active. It rotates at 6 a.m. Colt looked at him. Call it. If I call without a scheduled check-in, he'll know something's wrong. Then we'll give him something to be wrong about. Colt crossed to the desk and picked up a notepad, wrote 2 lines on it, and handed it to Tanner. Tell him the shipment route has been altered. Tell him the new timing moves the transfer window to Pier 17, 3 a.m. Tell him the rail yard was compromised and you're redirecting. Tanner read the notepad. You want to move him. I want him to come to me. Tanner looked up. He'll bring men. I know. Colt, Wade doesn't do anything small. If he comes to Pier 17 thinking he has the advantage, he'll come in force. Good, Colt said. Call him. Tanner made the call. It lasted 43 seconds. Wade's voice on the other end was calm and unhurried. The voice of a man who had been waiting a long time and had mastered the art of patience. He asked 2 questions. Tanner answered both. Then the line went dead. He's coming, Tanner said. How do you know? Because he didn't say no. Colt took the burner phone from Tanner's hand and pocketed it. Then he called Briggs. I need 12 men at Pier 17 by 2:15. Full kit. I need Ruiz's unit covering the south approach from the exterior. And I need 2 men to stay at the saloon, posted outside the back office. Nobody touches that room. Daisy? Briggs asked. Nobody touches that room, Colt repeated. He was about to hang up when Briggs said, There's something else. What? Doc found something in the relay logs. From 8 years ago. A series of system accesses that don't match any of our personnel. He's been trying to trace the origin. A pause. Colt, the access point was registered to a device that Doc says was physically located inside this building, the operations building, at the rail yard. Colt went very still. He's had access to this building, Colt said. For years, by the look of it. Doc thinks there may be hardware installed somewhere, a passive relay device, something that captures data without actively broadcasting. Find it, Colt said. Find it and remove it. Don't destroy it. I want it intact. He ended the call and looked at Tanner. He's been watching longer than you knew, Colt said. I know. Tanner's voice was hollowed out. I think he was watching me too. I think half of what I told him was information he already had. I wasn't a source. I was a confirmation mechanism. He was using me to verify what he'd already gathered. That was the part that would stay with Tanner the longest, Colt knew. Not the betrayal itself, the instrument of it. The understanding that even his treason had been managed, manipulated, made useful in ways he hadn't understood. Wade Granger hadn't bought Tanner's loyalty. He'd bought Tanner's usefulness and let Tanner believe they were the same thing. Colt moved toward the door, then stopped. The fund access, he said. The routing that made it look like the bribe money came from inside. You set that up? Wade set it up, Tanner said. I gave him the access credentials. He structured it to implicate all 3 of you. You, Briggs, Doc. Maximum confusion. Maximum paralysis. If you hadn't been in that storage room tonight, Colt said carefully, and Doc had found that routing without your confession, who did you think we'd have landed on? Tanner was quiet for a moment. Briggs, he said. The routing pattern points toward Briggs more than the others. Wade knew you trust him completely. Breaking that would... He stopped. It would have broken the whole command structure. That was the point. Not just destroy the chapter, destroy the trust between the people who held it together, from the inside, before a single shot was fired. Colt had underestimated him. He wouldn't do it again. He left Tanner under guard and walked out into the yard, and Briggs met him near the equipment shed with a small black device no larger than a deck of cards, encased in plastic, with a single green LED light on its face. Inside the electrical panel, Briggs said, second junction box from the left. It's been there long enough that there's dust settled around it. Colt took it, turned it over in his hands. Years, he said. At least 4, Doc thinks. Maybe more. Colt set it down on the ground and put his boot on it, but he didn't press. Not yet. He looked at it for a moment, this small piece of patient, methodical surveillance, and thought about what it represented. 12 years of planning, 18 months of active reconstruction, 4 years of listening to everything that moved through this rail yard. Wade Granger is not coming back for revenge, Colt said. Then what's he coming for? Briggs asked. He's coming to finish what he started 12 years ago, Colt said. He wanted to build an empire. I built one instead. He's been studying it for years, learning every weakness, every seam, every person who could be turned. Tonight was supposed to be the night he took it. He paused. He still thinks it is. Briggs looked at him. And we're going to let him think that. Until 2:15 a.m., he crushed the device under his boot. The preparation for Pier 17 moved fast and quiet, the way the best operations always do, without ceremony, without noise, each man knowing his position and moving to it with the efficiency of long practice. Colt's 12 men were in place by 2:07. Ruiz's unit sealed the south approach without a single radio transmission. The loading dock at Pier 17 was dark, deliberately, precisely dark, with the floodlights killed and the shadows arranged to look like negligence rather than preparation. Colt stood at the center of it and thought about Daisy. He thought about her walking 5 miles in the rain to save a man she'd never met because she couldn't bear the idea of someone else dying without knowing why. He thought about James Hart, who had found the truth and been killed for it before he could do anything with it. He thought about the distance between finding the truth and being able to use it, how that distance was where the most dangerous ground was, the ground where people died. He wasn't going to let that be the ground he died on. His phone buzzed, a number he didn't recognize. He answered it. The voice on the other end was unhurried, low, a little amused in the way that men are amused when they believe they're the most intelligent person in the room, even when the room is a phone call. "You moved fast," Wade Granger said. "Faster than I expected." Colt said nothing. "The girl was a variable I didn't fully account for," Wade continued. "I had the saloon's kitchen covered. I had the supply chain covered. I didn't have an 8-year-old with a memory like a camera and nothing left to lose." A pause. "Where is she?" "Somewhere you won't find her." "That's a protective answer. I'm almost touched." Another pause, longer this time. "You know, for a long time I told myself you'd done it deliberately. The explosion, the consolidation. I built a whole architecture of grievance on top of that belief." His voice changed slightly, a fraction lower, stripped of the amusement. "Did you?" "No," Colt said. A silence then. "I believe you. That's the most inconvenient part of all of this. I believe you didn't arrange it, which means I've spent 12 years and considerable resources dismantling something I spent the 12 years before that helping to build, based on a story someone told me that I wanted to be true." "Who told you?" Colt asked. "The refinery executives, the ones who actually staged the explosion, for insurance purposes, nothing to do with you or me. They needed someone to take the liability for the safety violations. A dead co-founder of a criminal organization is a very clean liability sink. They offered me a new life in exchange for my cooperation with the staging." His voice went flat. "I took it, and then I spent 11 years watching them profit from it, and watching you build what we were supposed to build together, and the anger needed somewhere to go. So you pointed it at me." "I pointed it at the thing that hurt the most," Wade said, "which was the same thing. Yes." This was the moment Colt had been calculating towards since the phone started ringing. Because Wade Granger was talking, and Wade Granger was a man who did not do anything without a purpose, which meant this call had a purpose. He was either stalling or he was trying to gauge how much Colt knew before he committed to the next move. "Are you at Pier 17? Colt asked. A pause. "Not yet," Wade said. "Then you already know it's a setup." "I suspected," Wade said. "Tanner's pacing was off when he called. He's always had a tell, breathes through his nose when he's nervous. Did you coach him, or did he do it on his own?" "He did it on his own," Colt said, and that was true, and that mattered, somehow. "The honest answer," Wade said, "you always did that, even when a lie would have served you better." A long exhale. "I'm not at Pier 17, Colt, but my men are, 12 of them, and they don't need me there to do what they were told to do." Colt's free hand went up immediately, 2 fingers, a sharp lateral gesture to Briggs, who was 6 feet away reading him in real time. Briggs's radio came up. "And what were they told to do?" Colt asked, keeping his voice level, keeping the line open, keeping Wade talking. "Originally, blow the cargo, destroy the pier, blame the hell's angles." Another pause. "But I'm tired, Colt. 12 years is a very long time to carry a war, and I've been standing in the dark for the last 20 minutes listening to the sound of the desert and thinking about how none of this—" His voice broke slightly, just for a second, then steadied. "None of this gives James Hart his life back." Briggs was already moving. His radio transmission was quiet, clipped, controlled. Then call them off, Colt said. I can't, Wade said. They have orders and they're not the type to revisit orders on a phone call from a boss who's having a change of heart. Then tell me where they're positioned. Why would I do that? Because you just told me you're tired, Colt said, and because a man who's tired and honest and sane does not let more people die for a war he's already decided is over. The silence on the line lasted long enough that Colt counted 6 seconds. Then Wade Granger told him. Wade gave him 6 positions. Colt relayed all 6 to Briggs in under 30 seconds, and Briggs moved the way Briggs always moved when the situation was clear and the clock was running. Without hesitation, without questions, with the quiet, grinding efficiency of a man who had spent his adult life turning chaos into outcomes. The 6 positions formed a perimeter around the cargo staging area at Pier 17. North Access Road, the grain tower on the east side, 2 flanking positions on the catwalks above the loading dock, 1 shooter elevated on the equipment shed roof, and 1 positioned inside the operations trailer near the dock gate. 12 men total, 6 positions. Wade had been precise, either because he was genuinely done or because he was precise even when he was lying, which had always been one of his more dangerous qualities. Colt kept him on the line. You could have just called me, Colt said. 19 months ago. When you came back, you could have called. And said what? Wade's voice was dry but not cold. It had the texture of something old and genuinely worn. Hello, I'm not dead. I'm angry, and I've been living under a different name in New Mexico for over a decade while you built everything we planned together? Yes, Colt said. Exactly that. A short, humorless sound, not quite a laugh. You would have put a gun in my face inside 30 seconds. Probably, Colt admitted, and then I would have listened. Another silence, longer. I didn't believe that then, Wade said. I'm not sure I deserve to believe it now. You don't, Colt said. Mercer's dead. Hart's dead. A man nobody knows the name of is dead because your people used him to test a poison meant for me. You don't get to feel absolved because you got tired at 2 in the morning. He kept his voice even, not hot. The anger was there, but it was controlled, channeled, doing work rather than just making noise. But I'm not interested in what you deserve. I'm interested in what happens next. So stay on the line and talk to me. Briggs's hand appeared in Colt's peripheral vision, 4 fingers raised, 4 positions confirmed and neutralized. The men in those positions were disarmed, face down, hands zip-tied, the methodical efficiency of professionals who had done this in worse conditions than a dark pier at 2 in the morning. 2 left. The grain tower shooter, Colt said into the phone. Tell him to put the rifle down and come down the ladder. Slowly. My men are at the base. A pause. Then, muffled, Wade speaking to someone on another line or a radio, and then Briggs's hand again. 1 more finger down. 1 position left. The shooter on the equipment shed roof. The last one, Colt said. His name is Carver, Wade said. He's been with me for 6 years. He won't stand down on my voice alone. He'll want visual confirmation from me. Then you need to be here. The weight of that settled between them on the phone line like something physical. If I come in, Wade said, what happens? That depends entirely on what you do when you get here. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have, Colt said, because I don't know what you're going to do. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to secure this pier, account for every man on it, and make sure that shipment moves safely in 3 hours. After that, he paused. After that, we have a conversation about James Hart and the refinery executives and 12 years of insurance fraud and a fake death that killed 2 real ones. And we have that conversation in a way that actually means something. Meaning federal involvement. Meaning accountability, Colt said, which is different from revenge. You told me you're tired. Then be done fighting and help me finish it right. 30 seconds of silence. Then the sound of an engine starting on the other end of the line. I'm 12 minutes out, Wade said. Colt lowered the phone and looked at Briggs. He's coming in. Keep your men on Carver's position. Don't move on him until Wade gives the visual. The moment Carver is down, I want a full perimeter seal. Nothing out. And Wade? He comes to me. Briggs studied him for a moment. You trust him? No, Colt said, but I trust that he's exhausted. And an exhausted man who knows the walls are closing doesn't usually die on a hill he's already decided wasn't worth it. He looked toward the dock. Usually. The 12 minutes felt longer than they were. Colt spent them moving through the pier, checking his men's positions, saying the things you say with your hands and your presence when words aren't available. A grip on a shoulder here, a nod there, the silent acknowledgement that said, I see you. You're doing right. Stay sharp. These were his men, not abstractions, not assets, men with names and histories, and people who would answer the phone if it rang at 3 a.m. Mercer had been one of them, and Mercer was in a building 20 yards away with a tarp over him, waiting for morning and a call to his wife that no one wanted to make. Colt had made that call before. He would make it again. It never got easier, and he had stopped expecting it to. Headlights appeared on the access road. The black pickup came in slowly. No aggression in the approach. No sudden stops or acceleration. Just a vehicle moving at the speed of a man who has already decided something and is following through on it. It stopped 20 feet from where Colt stood. The engine died. Wade Granger stepped out. He was older than the photographs Colt kept in memory. Of course he was. 12 years was 12 years, and the desert didn't spare anyone. But the bones of the face were the same. The posture was the same. The way he stood with his weight slightly forward, like a man always ready to move in any direction, that was the same. And the gold watch caught the ambient dock light when he raised his hands, slowly, clearly, showing his palms. He looked at Colt. Colt looked at him. For a moment, neither of them moved, and the dock was completely silent except for the distant highway and the sound of the desert settling into the deep, cold hours of early morning. You look like hell, Colt said. 12 years in hiding will do that, Wade said. Carver, Colt said. Call him down. Wade lifted his radio without looking away from Colt. Carver, it's over. Come down. A pause. Then from the equipment shed, the sound of boots on metal rungs. A figure descended slowly, was met at the base by two of Colt's men, and was processed in under a minute. Briggs confirmed it with a hand signal. The pier was secured. All 12 men. No shots fired. Nobody else dead tonight. Colt let out a breath that he hadn't fully realized he'd been holding. Then he said, "Give me your phone." Wade handed it over without hesitation. Colt looked at it. A burner, as expected, but with an open recording application that had been running for the entirety of their conversation. He looked up at Wade. "You've been recording this," Colt said. "Since you picked up," Wade confirmed, "everything I said, everything you said, the positions, the neutralizations, all of it." "Why?" "Because I needed documentation that I cooperated," Wade said. "Not for you, for whoever comes after this." He paused. "And because there are things I said on that recording that the refinery executives need to hear played back in a courtroom." Colt stared at him for a long moment. "You plan to go on record," Colt said. "I plan to burn everything to the ground," Wade said. But somewhere between Flagstaff and this dock, the plan changed. His eyes moved briefly to the operations building where Mercer lay. "A boy is dead because of what I built. James Hart is dead. I can't undo that. But I can make sure the people who lit the original match, the ones who staged the explosion, who falsified the reports, who killed Hart when he got close, I can make sure they don't walk away from this." "The refinery executives," Colt said. "3 names," Wade said. "And I have documentation. Physical records I've been holding as insurance for 11 years. Stored in a location only I know." He looked at Colt steadily. "I'll give you all of it, everything, in exchange for one thing." "What?" The girl, Wade said. Daisy Hart. Whatever happens to me, make sure she has somewhere to go. Make sure she's not left in the machinery of all this. His jaw tightened slightly. Her father found the truth and died before he could use it. She walked 5 miles in the rain to stop a man she didn't know from dying the same way. She's 8 years old, and she's been carrying things that full-grown men put down. He stopped. She deserves better than whatever the system is going to do with her. The silence between them was different now. Still heavy, but with a different quality. Less like a standoff, and more like two men standing on the same side of something terrible, looking at the shape of it together. That wasn't a negotiation, Colt said. That was already decided. Something crossed Wade's face, fast, genuine, and gone before it could be named. I know, he said. I just needed to say it out loud. Colt turned the recording phone over in his hands. This isn't enough on its own, he said. A recording made by a man who faked his death and ran a criminal operation for 12 years. A defense attorney drowns that in the first hearing. No, Wade agreed, but paired with the physical documentation, the financial records Doc has already pulled, Tanner's full cooperation, and the testimony of a refinery mechanic's daughter about what she saw and heard. He paused. It's enough. It's more than enough. Colt looked at him carefully. Tanner's full cooperation assumes Tanner cooperates fully. Tanner will, Wade said, and there was a certainty there that needed explaining. Because Tanner didn't come to me for money, he came because he felt invisible. Men who feel invisible want to matter. Give him the chance to matter, to actually dismantle something corrupt rather than just service it, and he'll take it. He always wanted to be on the right side. He just needed someone to show him where it was. It was the most perceptive thing anyone had said all night, and Colt recognized, with a clarity that landed uncomfortably, that it was also possibly the most perceptive thing Wade Granger had ever said. About a man he'd manipulated, about the psychology he'd exploited, delivered now as insight rather than tactics. People were complicated. That had always been the hardest part. I need to make a call, Colt said. He stepped away from Wade, far enough for privacy, close enough that Briggs had eyes on both of them simultaneously, and dialed a number he kept in a different mental category than the rest. A federal contact. Not a friend. The word friend didn't apply across that particular line, but a professional relationship built on the careful, mutual understanding that some problems were bigger than the categories that normally kept them apart. The phone rang 4 times. Then a voice, hoarse with sleep. Maddox, it's 3 a.m. I know, Colt said. I need 48 hours in a framework. For what? For delivering a package that includes documented insurance fraud, 2 staged industrial deaths, 1 confirmed murder, 11 years of corporate concealment, and the man at the center of all of it, cooperative and ready to testify. A long pause, the sound of someone sitting up in bed. That's a significant package, the voice said. It is. What do you need from me? 48 hours before anything moves formally, Colt said. I need to make sure the documentation is complete, the witnesses are protected, and a specific 8-year-old child is placed somewhere safe and permanent before any of this becomes public. The child is connected to the case? Her father was the murder victim, Colt said. She's the one who broke it open. Another silence. She's 8? Yes. God, the voice said softly. Then, collecting itself, 48 hours. I'll hold the formal process. But Maddox, whatever agreement you're making over there, it doesn't cover your operation. You understand that? I understand that, Colt said. This call is about the refinery executives and a man named Wade Granger. That's the package. That's what I'm delivering. Then we have a framework, the voice said. Colt ended the call and walked back to Wade. 48 hours, he said. In that window, you give me the physical documentation, you record a formal statement with full corroboration, and you make yourself available for the handover. He looked at him. After that, You're in federal hands. What happens from there is not in my control. I know, Wade said. I'm not asking for it to be. He put his hand out. Colt looked at it. The history between them. Everything built and broken and buried in the 12 years of Wade's absence, and the 12 before that, when they had built something together from nothing. All of it compressed into the space between two hands on a dark dock at 3 a.m. Colt took it, not as forgiveness, not as restoration, but as the acknowledgement that what came next mattered more than what had already happened, and that the only way to make the dead count for something was to not let the living waste the opening they'd made. Wade nodded once. Colt released his hand. Briggs, Colt said, secure him, separate transport. He walked back toward his bike. His phone was already in his hand. He called the saloon. His man picked up on the first ring. The girl, Colt said, is she awake? Sir, she... A pause. An odd pause. She's been awake for the last hour. She's been sitting at the desk looking at the map. She hasn't moved. Tell her... He stopped, started again. Tell her it's handled. Tell her I'm coming back. A shuffling sound on the other end of the line, muffled voices, and then, faint but clear, he heard Daisy's voice ask one question. Not, is he okay? Not, is it safe? Not any of the questions a child asks about her own situation. She asked, did it count for something? Colt stood still in the dark with the phone at his ear. His man repeated the question uncertainly. Sir, she's asking... I heard her, Colt said. He thought about Wade's hands in the air when he stepped out of the truck. He thought about the recording that documented the refinery executives' names in Wade's own voice. He thought about the documentation that would go to a federal prosecutor in 48 hours. The falsified safety reports, the insurance fraud, the staged explosion, the 11 years of corporate concealment, the death of James Hart dressed up as an accident and left on the books as a closed case. He thought about a mechanic who had found the truth and tried to do something about it and died before anyone came. Tell her yes, Colt said. Tell her it counted. He put the phone away and got on his bike. The desert highway unrolled ahead of him, and the sky over the eastern horizon had the first faint suggestion of something lighter. Not dawn yet, but the memory of it, the idea of it, the distant promise that the dark had an edge. He rode toward it, and behind him the pier was full of men doing their jobs. And Mercer was covered and still, and Wade Granger sat in the back of a vehicle with his hands folded and his long war, finally, quietly, over. And in the back office of the Iron Mesa Saloon, an 8-year-old girl sat in front of a map and waited for the man who had promised to come back. He did not intend to make her wait long. He got back to the Iron Mesa at 4:17 in the morning. The saloon was quiet in the way that places get quiet after something enormous has moved through them. Not peaceful, exactly, but settled, like the air after a storm has passed and the ground is still wet, but the wind has stopped. 2 of his men were posted outside the back office, exactly where he'd told them to be. They nodded when he came through the door and said nothing, which was exactly right. He knocked once on the office door before opening it. Daisy was sitting at the desk with her knees pulled to her chest and her chin resting on top of them, still looking at the map. She turned when the door opened, and when she saw it was him, something in her face shifted. Not relief exactly, something quieter and more complete than relief. Like a breath she'd been holding finally released without her deciding to release it. You came back, she said. Told you I would. He sat down across from her. He was exhausted in a way that went past tired, the kind of exhaustion that lives in the bones rather than the muscles, the kind that comes from a night where every decision had weight and some of them couldn't be undone. He didn't try to hide it from her. She'd been honest with him all night. He owed her the same. Is it over? She asked. Most of it, he said. The part that happens in the dark is over. The part that happens in daylight, in courtrooms, in federal offices, in newspapers, that takes longer. But the men who killed my dad, They're going to answer for it, Colt said. Not because I say so, because there's documentation now. Physical records, testimony, your testimony, if you're willing to give it when the time comes. He looked at her carefully. Nobody is going to pressure you on that. But what you saw and heard, what you told me tonight, it matters. It's part of what closes it. She was quiet for a moment. Then, the man with the boots, what happened to him? He's in custody, Colt said. Federal custody within 48 hours. Is he going to prison? For a long time, Colt said. Yes. She nodded, absorbed it, then looked back at the map. My dad used to say that the truth doesn't need you to be loud. It just needs you to be stubborn. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were bright in the way that means something is pressing hard against the inside of them. He was the most stubborn person I ever knew. He raised a daughter who walked 5 miles in the rain to save a stranger, Colt said. That doesn't happen by accident. She turned and looked at him then, fully, directly, and the expression on her face was not the expression of a child seeking comfort. It was the expression of someone measuring something, deciding something. What happens to me now? She asked. It was the question she'd been sitting with all night. The one underneath everything else, under the courage and the memory and the running and the warning and all of it. She was 8 years old, her father was dead, her grandmother was sick, and the world she'd walked into tonight was one she had no map for. Colt leaned forward and put both forearms on the desk. That's up to you, he said. Partly. There are things that have to happen through official channels. You understand that. There are processes. He paused. But I'm going to be at every step of those processes, making sure they move the right direction. And when they're done, he stopped, looked at her. I'm establishing a fund for families of refinery workers, for families like yours. Housing, legal support, the things people need when a system has taken something from them and left them with nothing. He paused again. And there's a house outside of Tucson. It belongs to me. It's been sitting empty because I've never had a reason to use it for anything other than a place to park things I wasn't ready to think about yet. He let that land. I think I have a reason now. Daisy stared at him. You're serious, she said. I don't say things I don't mean, Colt said. Ask anyone in this building. That's not a home, she said carefully, and there was something in the precision of it that hit him. Just because you put me in a house doesn't make it a home. I know that, he said. A house is a start, the rest takes time. And people. He looked at her. I'm not the most obvious candidate for this kind of thing. I understand that. But I'm here, and I'm asking. And the alternative is a system that processes kids like paperwork and spits them out on the other side of 18 with nothing. His voice didn't waver, but it dropped slightly. Your father tried to do the right thing, and no one was there to back him up. I'm not willing to let that be the shape of your story, too. She was very still for a long moment. My grandmother, she said, she's sick. She needs help. She'll have it. She's not easy to deal with. Neither am I. Something flickered across Daisy's face. The first thing that wasn't fear or grief or exhaustion. Something small and surprised and almost a smile. It didn't quite get there, but it was close enough that Colt felt it land somewhere he hadn't expected. Okay, she said. Quiet, simple. He nodded once. He stood up, and she unfolded herself from the chair, and they walked out of the back office together into the saloon where his men were still present, still alert, still doing what they did. And when they saw Colt walk out with the girl, there was a shift in the room. Not dramatic, not sentimental, but real. The kind of shift that happens when people who deal in hard realities see someone choose something soft and recognize it not as weakness, but as a different kind of strength. Briggs was there. He'd arrived 20 minutes ahead of Colt, come straight from the pier, still had diesel on his jacket. He looked at Daisy, then at Colt. How is she? he asked, as if Daisy wasn't standing right there. She's right here, Daisy said. Briggs blinked, looked at her, then the corner of his mouth moved, an almost imperceptible shift in a face that was not built for softness. Fair point, he said. Colt put a hand on Briggs's shoulder, brief and firm. Call Raina Mercer at 6 a.m. Don't let her hear it from anyone else. Don't send someone. You call her. Yourself. Briggs's jaw tightened. Yes. And Tanner's situation. I want his full debrief recorded and documented by morning. He cooperates completely, everything he knows, in sequence. He wants to matter. Let him matter. And after? After is after, Colt said, one thing at a time. Doc Reynolds was still at the corner table with his laptop and his wire-rimmed glasses and his expression of permanent, low-level calculation. He looked up when Colt approached. The financial documentation, Colt said. Everything you pulled tonight. I need it organized and ready to transfer by tomorrow afternoon. Federal format. I know the format, Doc said dryly. I know you do. Doc looked at him over his glasses. This is a significant exposure for the organization. You understand that. Even with the package we're delivering, there's going to be scrutiny. There was always going to be scrutiny, Colt said. The difference is now we control what they're looking at and why. He held Doc's gaze. We're not hiding from this. We're using it. Doc nodded slowly. You know this changes things, the way we operate, the profile we carry. It was already changing, Colt said, and he meant it in the way you mean something when you understand it isn't just strategy, when you understand it's true. He walked back to where Daisy was sitting on a bar stool, eating another piece of bread that someone had put in front of her, looking around the saloon with the particular alertness of a child who has learned to read every room she enters for the nearest exit. He sat down beside her. Get some sleep, he said. Few hours. We'll sort the next steps when the sun's up and we can see what we're doing. I don't sleep well in new places, she said. Neither do I, he said. Hasn't killed me yet. She looked at him sideways. Is that supposed to be comforting? It's supposed to be honest. She considered this. Okay, she said. Honest is fine. She slid off the stool and one of Colt's men showed her to a back room that had been converted from storage. A cot, a blanket, a lamp. Not much, but clean and quiet and with a door that locked from the inside, which Colt had specified because a child who'd spent weeks running needed to feel the difference between a room she was locked into and a room she could lock. He heard the latch click from the hallway. Then he stood there for a moment in the quiet and felt the full weight of the night settle onto him at once. Mercer, the pier, Wade's hands in the air, the recording phone, the federal call, the documentation, the 48 hours ahead, the weeks after that, and beyond it all, a child asleep for the first time in weeks, without the things she was most afraid of still being loose in the world. It didn't feel like victory. Victory was clean and complete, and Colt had learned long ago that real outcomes were neither. What it felt like was accountability. Not the word he would have reached for 6 hours ago, but 6 hours ago he'd been sitting at a table about to eat a poisoned steak, and the only person in the room honest enough to stop him had been an 8-year-old girl with dirty feet and borrowed courage. Perspective had a way of reorganizing itself quickly when the alternative was dying without knowing why. 6 weeks later, the 3 senior executives of Westside Refinery, including the man who had arranged Wade Granger's fake death, falsified a decade of safety reports, and ordered the surveillance that ended with James Hart's death, were indicted on charges that included insurance fraud, evidence falsification, corporate manslaughter, and conspiracy. The indictments made the regional news first, then the national wire, and the details that came out in the court filings, the staged explosion, the 11 years of covered-up violations, the worker deaths dressed up as accidents, landed hard enough that 2 state legislators called for a full industry audit before the first hearing was even scheduled. Wade Granger testified. He did it without a deal that reduced his exposure to nothing. He had never asked for that, and Colt had never offered it. He testified because he said he would, and because the man who had taught Colt Maddox that your word is the only currency that survives every other kind of loss had apparently remembered that lesson himself, even after 12 years of forgetting everything else. Tanner gave a full debrief that ran 11 hours across 2 days. He sat in a federal office and laid out 7 months of operational compromise with the exhausted thoroughness of a man who had carried something far too heavy for far too long. The federal contact told Colt privately that Tanner's testimony was the load-bearing pillar of the case, specific, detailed, and without gaps. He said Tanner had the manner of a man who had been waiting a very long time for someone to ask him the right questions. Colt thought about what Wade had said on the dock, that Tanner had always wanted to be on the right side. He just needed someone to show him where it was. He didn't share that with the federal contact. Some things belong to the people who learn them. Raina Mercer received a fund in Danny's name that covered the house, Clara's education through college, and the medical costs that came with raising a child alone. Colt called Raina himself, not Briggs, Colt, and the call lasted 40 minutes, and he did not try to make it smaller than it was. He said her husband was owed better than what he got, and that he was sorry, and that sorry was not enough, and that it had to be said anyway. Raina said 2 things. She said thank you, and she said, don't let it happen to anyone else's husband. Colt said he heard her and meant it. The Children's Fund was established through 3 of the Hells Angles' legitimate businesses: a mechanic shop, a logistics company, and a food distribution operation that had been running quietly for 4 years along desert towns hit by layoffs. Colt didn't put his name on it publicly. He put Daisy's father's name on it: James Hart Memorial Fund. Safe housing, legal support, emergency resources for families left behind by industrial accidents, real accidents and the ones that weren't. The logo was simple: a wrench and a name. Daisy moved into the house outside Tucson in the 3rd week of September, along with her grandmother, who was difficult and sharp-tongued and deeply suspicious of Colt Maddox and everything he represented, and who 6 months in made him a plate of food without being asked and set it on the table without comment, which was the closest thing to approval she was apparently willing to offer. He ate every bite. Daisy started school. She was behind in some subjects and ahead in others. She could read 3 years above her grade level and had a memory for detail that her teacher described in a parent-teacher conference that Colt attended and said almost nothing during, as both remarkable and occasionally alarming. He thought that was about right. On a Thursday evening in early October, Colt came back from a logistics run to find Daisy at the kitchen table with a map spread out in front of her. Not a road map this time, but a topographical survey of the region around the old rail yard, covered in handwritten notations in the meticulous small print of a child who had never wasted a word in her life. He sat down across from her. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Looking at things," she said. "What things?" She looked up at him. "There are 3 more refinery operations in the county that use the same pressure valve system as Westside. The same falsified safety standards could apply to any of them." She pushed the map toward him. "Someone should look." Colt looked at the map, looked at her. He thought about James Hart, alone in a refinery at the end of a shift, who had found something in the numbers and tried to do something about it, and was killed before anyone came. He thought about what it meant to finish what someone started. "Someone will," he said. He put his hand flat on the map, and so did she, small and certain beside his. And in the quiet of that ordinary kitchen, the most feared biker boss in the Southwest, and the 8-year-old girl who had saved his life, made a second, quieter commitment to something larger than either of them. Power built on fear collapses from within. What gets rebuilt through protection, through the stubborn, unglamorous daily choice to show up for the people the world has decided don't matter, that doesn't collapse. That lasts. And sometimes the person who teaches you that isn't the one you expected. Sometimes it's the smallest voice in the room, the one everyone else would have ignored, the one who walked 5 miles in the rain to make sure someone knew why.